They told me to resign by Friday. I let them fire the wrong person. The email came in at 7:12 a.m. No subject line, no greeting, just one sentence, written the way people write when they think they're untouchable. Please see HR by Friday to discuss your resignation. I stared at it longer than I should have. Not because I was scared, but because I finally understood something that had been bothering me for years. They never planned to fire me. They planned to erase me. I locked my phone and finished my coffee like it was any other morning. Same mug, same seat by the window, same view of the city waking up while everything I'd built was quietly being prepared for demolition. My wife, Lila, walked into the kitchen still in her robe, scrolling through her phone. "Morning," she said casually. I waited. She always told me everything. At least, that's what I used to believe. She poured herself coffee, added oat milk, sat across from me. Nothing. No mention of HR. No mention of the meeting she absolutely knew was coming. That was when it clicked. This wasn't a work problem. This was a family decision. I'd been with Astor and Company for 13 years. Not some flashy tech startup. Not a soulless corporation either. A private investment firm that quietly controlled logistics contracts across 3 states. Boring on paper. Ruthless in practice. I wasn't a junior employee who clawed his way up. I was there before the expansion, before the acquisitions, before the offshore restructuring that everyone praised as visionary. I built systems. I wrote policies. I drafted contingency clauses that people skimmed and signed because they trusted me. And yes, Lila's family owned the firm. Not openly, not officially, but everyone important knew. When we married, her father shook my hand and said, "You're one of us now." What he meant was, "You'll never be more than what we allow." HR was on the 12th floor. Glass walls, neutral colors, the kind of place designed to make people feel small without raising its voice. Across the table sat Denise from HR, her tablet angled just slightly away from me, and Mark, my brother-in-law. Mark didn't bother pretending this was uncomfortable. He leaned back, arms crossed, smiling like someone watching a chessboard where the outcome was already decided. "Let's not drag this out," he said. "You've had a good run." Denise slid a document toward me. A resignation letter. Already written. Already dated. They didn't even wait for my consent to imagine me gone. "You can resign quietly," Mark continued, "or we proceed with termination. Your choice." I didn't touch the paper. "On what grounds?" I asked. Mark chuckled. "Performance. Culture. Alignment. Pick one. Or all 3. Denise finally looked up. Her expression said she'd done this before. "Many times. You'll receive a severance package if you resign," she added. "Generous. Considering." I nodded slowly. "By Friday?" I asked. Mark smiled wider. "By Friday." I stood up, straightened my jacket, and thanked them for their time. Mark looked surprised. He expected anger, begging, negotiation. What he didn't expect was compliance. Lila didn't ask how HR went. That evening, she talked about dinner plans, her sister's vacation, a renovation her mother wanted to do. I watched her carefully. Every smile, every pause, every moment she avoided my eyes. Finally, I asked, "Did Mark mention anything to you?" She hesitated for half a second too long. "About what?" I smiled back. "Nothing. Just curious." That night, lying beside her, I realized something else. They weren't just removing me from the company. They were preparing to remove me from the marriage. I spent the next 2 days doing nothing unusual. I went to work on time, answered emails, attended meetings, and quietly, methodically, I reviewed documents I hadn't looked at in years. Policies I drafted early in my career. Emergency succession protocols. Termination procedures buried deep in operational manuals. The kind of documents executives never read, but lawyers lose sleep over. I didn't copy anything, didn't download anything. I didn't need to. I wrote them. On Thursday evening, Lila finally brought it up. "You've been quiet," she said, sitting across from me at dinner. "Busy week," I replied. She tapped her fork nervously. "Mark said, things are changing at the firm. I waited. He thinks it might be best if you stepped away. I looked at her. Really looked. You agree? I asked calmly. She didn't answer right away. That's not what this is about, she said carefully. This is about harmony. About not making things harder than they need to be. I nodded. Harmony, I repeated. She reached for my hand, then stopped. You'll be taken care of, she said. You always land on your feet. That was the moment I knew. She wasn't worried about me. She was worried about how quietly I would disappear. Friday morning, I didn't go to HR. I didn't resign. I waited. At 10:03 a.m., my access card stopped working. At 10:07, IT locked my account. At 10:15, I received a calendar invite titled Termination Meeting Mandatory. They fired me. Just like that. Security escorted me out politely, like I was a guest who had overstayed his welcome. Mark didn't show his face. He didn't need to. He thought the game was over. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that termination triggered something resignation never would have. A clause, buried, ignored, activated automatically when a senior systems architect was terminated without cause and without board review. A clause that didn't scream, didn't announce itself. It simply waited. That evening, Lila came home late. Her phone didn't leave her hand. She barely spoke during dinner. At 11:48 p.m., my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I answered. A lawyer's voice, tight and confused, said, "We need to ask you something about a document you wrote 13 years ago." I smiled for the first time all week. The lawyer didn't introduce himself at first. He didn't need to. His voice already told me everything I needed to know. Measured, controlled. That particular tone people use when they've discovered a problem they can't legally undo. "Mr. Hale," he said, "we're reviewing an operational contingency protocol from 2011. It appears to have been authored by you." "Yes," I replied. Silence stretched. Then carefully, "Did you intend for it to execute automatically?" I looked at the ceiling. I intended it to execute correctly. Another pause. "Then we may have a situation." By the time I hung up, I knew exactly what was happening. When they terminated me, they triggered Section 9C of the firm's internal governance framework, a clause written during the firm's first expansion, back when everything was unstable and paranoia passed for foresight. It was designed for hostile takeovers, back when no one trusted anyone, back when I was the one tasked with imagining worst-case scenarios. The clause did three things. Froze operational authority across multiple departments, flagged all executive-level transactions for review, automatically notified external compliance monitors, all without naming me, all without emotion, just quiet mechanical consequences. By the time Mark realized what was happening, it was already too late. The next morning, the firm didn't open on time. Employees were told systems were under maintenance. Board members couldn't access reports. Payments stalled. Contracts paused mid-process. Client noticed. They always do. At 9:43 a.m., my phone rang again. "This time, Mark." I let it ring. Twice. Then I answered. "What did you do?" he demanded. I leaned back in my chair. "Good morning, Mark." "This isn't funny," he snapped. "Access is locked. Accounts are frozen. The board is asking questions." I kept my voice even. "I was terminated," I said. "I'm no longer an employee. I have no access." "You wrote that system," he said. "You know how to stop it. Then you should have kept me," I replied. He hung up. Lila came home early that day. Not frantic, not angry, just unsettled. She sat across from me, hands folded tightly in her lap. "Something's wrong at the firm," she said. "So I hear." She studied my face. "They think it has something to do with you." I met her eyes. "Do you?" She hesitated. "I think," she said slowly, "that you're enjoying this." I smiled gently. "No," I said. "I'm enduring it." That night, she slept on the couch. By Wednesday, the situation escalated. Compliance auditors arrived. Outside counsel demanded explanations. Board members, some of whom had barely acknowledged my existence for years, suddenly remembered my name. One of them left a voicemail. Another sent an email titled, "Clarification required, urgent." I didn't respond because I couldn't. I was no longer affiliated, and the clause didn't require my involvement. That was the point. Thursday afternoon, Lila's father called. He never called me directly. Never had. "Come by," he said. "We need to talk." I arrived to find the house tense. The kind of silence that screams beneath polite words. Mark was there. So was Lila's mother and the firm's legal counsel. This wasn't a family meeting. This was damage control. Her father gestured for me to sit. "You've put us in a difficult position," he said. I nodded. "I warned you once, years ago, that termination protocols mattered." Mark scoffed. "You buried a landmine. I documenta a safawar. I correcta." You stepped on it. The lawyer cleared his throat. "The issue," he said carefully, "is that the clause references governance misalignment, which is subjective," I finished, "and therefore reviewable." Lila's father leaned forward. "What do you want?" There it was. Not an apology, not accountability, just negotiation. "I want nothing," I said. They stared. "You already took everything from me," I continued. "The job, the trust, the marriage." Lila flinched. "I just want you to live with the consequences of your decision." That night, Lila confronted me. "You could stop this," she said. "You're choosing not to." I didn't deny it. "You chose not to warn me," I said. "You chose silence. You chose harmony over honesty." Her voice cracked. "They were my family, and I was your husband," I replied. She looked away. "I didn't think they'd actually fire you," she whispered. I laughed quietly. "That's the problem," I said. "You never thought at all." The firm didn't collapse. Not completely, but it changed. Contracts were renegotiated. Board oversight tightened. Mark lost authority. And quietly, very quietly, my clause was removed. Too late. 3 weeks later, Lila moved out. She didn't fight, didn't argue. She just accepted it. I think that hurt her more than anger would have. Months later, I received a final message from the same lawyer. "The board would like to offer you a consulting role." I deleted it. Some doors don't close loudly. They just stop opening. Was I wrong for letting it play out? Or did they earn every consequence? Drop your opinion in the comments. I read them all. If you enjoy slow burn stories where power shifts quietly and truth hits late, subscribe and like so you don't miss the next one. Because the most dangerous moves are the ones no one sees coming. Everyone trusted me. That was the first mistake. The first time someone accused me of lying, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. I had built my entire adult life on being reliable, predictable, calm, the guy people leaned on when things went wrong. The one who remembered birthdays, showed up early, paid his share, kept secrets. So when a coworker pulled me aside and said, "People are saying you manipulated the meeting," I honestly thought it was a joke. "Whose people?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just looked uncomfortable. That should have been my warning. It started small. A calendar invite I supposedly sent, but didn't remember sending. A message quoted back to me that didn't sound like something I'd write. A decision attributed to me that I had no memory of making. At first, I assumed stress. I've been working long hours, sleeping badly, skipping meals. It happens. Until one night, I opened my sent email folder and saw an email I knew I hadn't written. The tone was polite, professional, carefully vague, and signed with my name. I reread it 5 times. Checked the timestamp. Checked the IP. Checked the device. It was sent from my laptop. From my account. At a time when I was in the shower. I sat there, towel still around my waist, heart pounding. Not panicked, not yet, but unsettled. That quiet kind of fear where your brain hasn't caught up to what your body already knows. I changed my passwords. Enabled 2-factor authentication. Logged out of every device. I told myself it was a glitch. Then I went to bed. The next morning, my manager asked to see me. He didn't accuse me. He didn't confront me. He just said, "You've been different lately." Different. That word people use when they don't want to say wrong. He slid a printed document across the desk. Meeting notes. My comments highlighted. Things I supposedly said that sounded off. subtly manipulative, nothing outrageous, just enough to plant doubt. I don't remember saying this, I said. He nodded slowly. That's what worries me. Over the next 2 weeks, the pattern became clear. Every few days, something happened in my name. Never illegal, never extreme, just questionable. Enough to make people uncomfortable. Enough to make them watch me more closely. Enough to make them start whispering. I started noticing the looks, the pauses when I entered rooms, the way conversations stopped mid-sentence, the way people phrased questions carefully around me, like I was unstable. I tried to defend myself. That was my second mistake. When you deny something calmly, people listen. When you deny something repeatedly, people start wondering why. When you deny something no one directly accused you of, people assume you're hiding something. I checked my laptop, ran virus scans. Nothing. I checked my phone. Nothing. I checked my cloud logins. Clean. Everything said I was the one doing it. I started doubting myself. That's the most dangerous part. Because once you start questioning your own memory, everything becomes negotiable. The first person to cut me off was Ethan. We've been friends for 9 years. He stopped responding to messages. When I finally confronted him, he hesitated, then said, "You told me not to get involved." I never said that. He frowned. "You did." He said it calmly, like you didn't care. Something in his expression changed. Not anger, disappointment. That hurt worse. I started documenting everything. Screenshots, logs, timestamps, a private notebook where I wrote down what I actually said and did, just in case. That notebook would later save me. But not yet. One night, I received a message from a number I didn't recognize. "You're handling this badly." I stared at the screen. I replied, "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "You know who I am. You just don't want to admit it yet." My stomach dropped. "Admit what?" The reply came instantly. "That I sound exactly like you." I didn't sleep that night. I replayed conversations in my head, read old emails, listened to my own voicemails, trying to spot patterns, trying to find proof, trying to figure out how someone could be me without being me. The next incident was worse. A complaint was filed. Detailed, carefully worded. It accused me of subtle coercion, of influencing decisions quietly, of steering outcomes without authority. Nothing provable, nothing concrete, but enough to trigger an internal review. I was placed on temporary leave. Not fired, just paused, like a dangerous machine. At home, I opened my laptop and found a new folder on my desktop. It wasn't there before. The folder was titled Reference. Inside were recordings, audio clips, short, clean, clear, my voice, saying things I had never said, with my tone, my cadence, my pauses. Perfect. I felt cold, not scared, cold, because fear implies panic. This felt deliberate. At the bottom of the folder was a text file. One line. "If you keep denying it, they'll never believe you." That was the moment I understood. This wasn't someone trying to destroy me. This was someone replacing me. I didn't go to the police. What would I say? Someone is pretending to be me very convincingly? Someone is using my voice, my devices, my mannerisms? I didn't even know if that was possible. But whoever was clearly knew me, better than I knew myself. I closed the laptop, sat in the dark, and for the first time since this began, I stopped reacting. Instead, I asked myself one question. Who benefits if everyone thinks I'm unstable, but not guilty? The answer scared me more than the evidence. I didn't confront anyone the next day. That was deliberate. Whoever was doing this wanted reaction. Panic, noise, something messy they could twist into proof. So I did the opposite. I went quiet. No emails, no texts, no explanations. For the first time since this started, I watched instead of defending. And that's when I noticed something horrifying. People weren't waiting for answers. They were relieved I'd stopped talking. Silence suited the story they had already accepted. The unstable guy stepping back. The manipulator laying low. The one finally realizing he'd gone too far. My absence became confirmation. 3 days later, my manager emailed. It wasn't hostile. It was sympathetic. That was worse. He wrote that the company wanted to support me through this period and suggested I take extended leave while they restructured responsibilities. That's corporate language for you're done, but we don't want drama. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the notebook I'd been keeping and read everything from the beginning. Every timestamp, every inconsistency, every moment where something happened through me, but not by me. A pattern emerged, not in the actions, but in the timing. Everything happened when I was distracted, exhausted, or emotionally compromised. Someone wasn't just impersonating me, they were studying me. That night, I received another message. Same unknown number. They're adjusting faster than I expected. I typed back slowly. Why are you doing this? The reply took longer this time. Because you're easy to replace. That sentence sat in my chest like a weight. You don't even know me. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then, I know you better than anyone. You train me. I stared at that line until my eyes burned. Train me. That word cracked something open. I went through old files, old projects, old conversations. Then I found it. A folder buried deep in my archives from years ago. Labeled with a name I hadn't thought about in a long time. Aaron. Aaron was quiet, observant, brilliant in a way that made people underestimate him. We'd worked closely for almost 2 years. I mentored him, defended him when others dismissed him, taught him how to phrase things carefully, how to influence without being obvious, how to let people believe ideas were theirs. I showed him how to speak like me, because at the time, I thought that was kindness. Then he was let go, not dramatically. No acquiescence, no blobu, just phased out. Budget cuts. I barely thought about it afterward. That was my third mistake. I searched his name online. Nothing recent. But when I checked archive data, I found something disturbing. A research paper, unpublished, on behavioral voice modeling, written by him. Years ago, the next message confirmed it. You taught me how to sound reasonable, how to make people trust the tone instead of the words. My hand was shaking now. You destroyed my life. The reply was immediate. No, I just showed them who you could be. I finally asked the question I'd been avoiding. What do you want? The typing indicator stayed for a long time. Then, I want to exist. That was when I understood. This wasn't revenge. This was substitution. He didn't want to expose me. He wanted to erase me quietly and step into the space I left behind. My credibility, my relationships, my position, not as a clone, as an upgrade. I decided to stop hiding, but I didn't confront him directly. I did something far more dangerous. I let him keep going. I started leaking controlled mistakes into my own behavior. Small contradictions, subtle changes in tone, nothing obvious, just enough to create divergence between me and the version of me he was performing. At the same time, I re-entered conversations calmly, carefully, documenting everything. People began noticing, not consciously, but enough to feel unsettled. The impersonation started slipping. Then came the mistake. He overplayed his hand. He sent a message pretending to be me, to someone who had just spoken to me in person minutes earlier. The timing didn't align. For the first time, doubt appeared. I confronted him that night. Not angrily, not emotionally, just with evidence. Logs, voice analysis, timing discrepancies, the research paper. I didn't threaten him. I didn't accuse. I simply said, I see you. The reply came slower than ever before. If you expose this, you'll lose everything. They won't know who to believe. I answered honestly. I already lost everything. That's when he panicked. He tried to escalate, sent messages faster, made bolder claims. But panic ruins precision, and precision was all he had. Within a week, the truth surfaced, not dramatically, but undeniably. Not everyone believed me, but enough did. That was all it took. Aaron disappeared. No final message. No apology. Just silence. I didn't get my job back. I didn't repair every relationship. Some people never admitted they were wrong. They just drifted. And that's the part no one tells you. Vindication doesn't restore what doubt destroys. Months later, I found one last message in my archived inbox, sent long after everything ended. I almost became you. I didn't reply, because by then, I understood the real lesson. People don't trust truth. They trust familiarity. And once someone learns how to wear your identity better than you protect it, you're already halfway gone. If you were in my place, would you have exposed him, knowing it would permanently damage your reputation, or stayed silent and started over somewhere else? Drop your take in the comments. I read them. If this story made you uncomfortable in the right way, hit like and subscribe, because the next one goes even deeper into how easily reality can be rewritten. The day I realized I was living inside someone else's plan. I always thought the scariest betrayals were loud. Arguments, screaming, slammed doors, confessions that explode, everything at once. I was wrong. The scariest betrayal is the one that feels organized. The kind that only makes sense after it's already too late. It started with a letter that wasn't meant for me. No name on the envelope. No return address. Just my apartment number written neatly in black ink, like someone who had practiced it. Inside was a single printed page. No greeting. No explanation. Just one sentence. You trust the wrong version of your own life. I laughed at first. Not because it was funny, but because it felt dramatic in a way that didn't belong to my life. I wasn't important. I wasn't powerful. I wasn't hiding anything. I was just normal, or at least I thought I was. Over the next week, 3 things happened. Individually, they meant nothing. Together, they changed how I saw everything. First, my sister stopped answering my calls. Not angrily, not obviously, just delays, short replies, then nothing. When I finally went to her place unannounced, she looked surprised in a way that didn't match the situation. Like she'd been caught off guard by a version of me she wasn't expecting. She said she was busy, said we'd talk later. We didn't. Second, my partner started asking questions that felt rehearsed. Not accusations, clarifications. Did you ever tell anyone about that thing with your dad? Have you talked to anyone from your old job recently? Who knows about our finances? Each question felt reasonable on its own, but they were all angled the same way, as if she was checking what information I still controlled. Third, I received another letter. Same handwriting, same envelope. This one said, "They're already adjusting." That was the moment the fear arrived. Not panic, not terror, just the slow, quiet realization that something was moving around me without my permission. I tried to trace the letters. No fingerprints, no postage marks. Dropped by hand. Someone close enough to know my schedule. Someone who knew where I lived. Someone who knew how I thought. I started paying attention. Really paying attention. And once you do that, you can't stop. I noticed how conversations ended a little too cleanly. How people finished my sentences, but not the way I would have. How explanations were offered before I asked for them. How my partner would say things like, "You already agreed to this," and I couldn't remember doing so, but doubted myself enough not to argue. That doubt became the weapon, because the truth is, memory is fragile, and trust makes it worse. The third letter arrived on a Sunday morning. This one was longer, still printed, still anonymous. It listed things, moments, conversations I'd had years ago, private ones, some I barely remembered. And then, at the bottom, you don't notice when people rewrite you because you assume they wouldn't. I confronted my partner that night, gently, casually. I didn't accuse. I asked. She listened calmly, too calmly. Then she smiled and said something that still chills me. "Why are you acting like this now?" Not what was I talking about. Not why was I concerned. Just why now? As if this version of me was unexpected. That's when I realized something terrifying. They weren't reacting to my questions. They were reacting to a change in my behavior. Like actors noticing someone miss a cue. I checked my shared cloud folders. Files had been renamed. Dates adjusted. Versions replaced. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to create uncertainty. When I brought it up, my sister finally responded. One message. "I think you should talk to someone." Not me. Someone. That word told me everything. The next letter confirmed it. They're preparing an explanation that doesn't include you. I stopped sleeping, not from fear, but from obsession. I replayed years of interactions, moments where decisions were made without me noticing, times when my opinion seemed remembered differently than how I expressed it, times when people said, "You said this," and I nodded because arguing felt pointless. I wasn't being attacked. I was being managed. The breaking point came when I found a document on my partner's laptop. Not hidden, not locked, almost like it was meant to be found eventually. A timeline. My life reduced to bullet points. My habits, my emotional triggers, my unreliable narratives, my patterns of confusion. At the top, one line stood out. If he starts asking questions, emphasize concern for his mental health. I closed the laptop slowly, quietly, carefully, and in that moment, I understood the final, horrifying truth. This wasn't a betrayal between individuals. This was collaboration. They weren't trying to hurt me. They were trying to replace my authority over my own story. And the worst part, they were doing it kindly. That night, another letter arrived. The last one for now. It said, "You can still choose how this ends, but only if you stop assuming they're wrong." I didn't know who was sending the letters. I still don't, but I knew one thing for certain. Someone was watching this unfold. Someone who wasn't on their side. And someone who believed I could still take control, if I was willing to see how deep it went. I didn't confront anyone after that. That was my first real decision. For the first time in weeks, I chose silence on purpose. Not fierce silence, strategic silence. Because once you realize people are rewriting your reality, the worst thing you can do is announce that you've noticed. So I played my role. I smiled when I was expected to smile. I agreed when agreement felt safest. I let conversations drift where they wanted them to go. And while they thought I was slipping back into confusion, I started documenting everything. Not digitally, on paper, dates, times, phrases, exact gording, because paper can't be quietly edited at 3 in the morning. I tested them, small things at first. I mentioned events that never happened. Nothing dramatic, just harmless details. A lunch we never had, a phone call that didn't exist, a decision I never made. And every single time, they corrected me. Immediately, confidently, as if they had rehearsed the correction already. That's when I knew this wasn't gaslighting in the messy, emotional sense people talk about online. This was structured. My partner started helping more, offering to manage my schedule, reminding me of things before I forgot them, speaking for me in conversations, always gently, always framed as care. And every time she did, she watched my reaction carefully, like she was measuring something invisible. Compliance. I found more documents, hidden better this time. Notes about containment, about narrative stability, about external risk. One line made my stomach drop. Sibling remains the weak link. They met my sister. I want to see her again. No warning. She didn't let me inside. We talked through the door like strangers. She kept glancing behind her like someone was listening. When I asked her directly if she was involved, her face collapsed. Not into anger, into guilt. And that told me everything. She didn't deny it. She just said, it wasn't supposed to go this far. That sentence ended my old life. Because you don't say that unless there was a beginning I never agreed to. She told me pieces, never the whole thing. It started years ago, she said, after something I don't even remember saying. A moment where I apparently scared them. Not violently, ideologically. I questioned a family story, a lie everyone had agreed to live with. I don't know what lie it was. Every time I asked, she shut down, said she wasn't allowed to tell me. Allowed. That word again. I asked who decided I needed to be managed. She said my partner first noticed, that I was hard to predict, that I asked questions that disrupted things. Then my parents agreed, then my sister, then a therapist I don't remember meeting, then a lawyer. It grew slowly, like a committee forming around a problem. And I was the problem. I asked her why she agreed. She said something honest. I was afraid of losing everyone else. That's when I understood. This wasn't about control. It was about fear. Fear of change. Fear of truth. Fear of a version of me they couldn't steer. The anonymous letters stopped after that, which terrified me more than when they existed, because it meant whoever was helping me believed I no longer needed warnings. Or worse, they believed it was time for the final act. 2 days later, my partner staged an intervention. Soft voices, concerned faces, words like support and care and getting ahead of this. They wanted me to agree to an evaluation, just a formality, just to clear things up. I looked around that room and realized something horrifying. Every single person there believed they were doing the right thing. That made them dangerous. I said yes, because refusing would have proven their case. The evaluation never happened, because that night I released everything. Not publicly, strategically. Copies of documents sent to people they didn't expect. A lawyer who owed me a favor from years ago. An old colleague who knew how to verify records. A journalist friend I hadn't spoken to in a decade. I didn't accuse. I asked questions. And questions are harder to silence than claims. The collapse was quiet. Emails stopped getting answered. Meetings were postponed. People started contradicting each other. My sister called crying, saying she didn't know it would unravel this fast. My partner stopped pretending. She went cold, legal, careful with words. That confirmed it. The final conversation happened 3 weeks later. Just the two of us. No tears, no jitting. She admitted it then, but they never planned to hurt me. They just wanted me predictable, safe, contained. She said, "We didn't think you'd fight back like this." And for the first time, I smiled, because neither did I. Here's the truth no one tells you. Betrayal doesn't always come from malice. Sometimes it comes from people deciding they know what's best for you without asking. Sometimes it comes dressed as love. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't forgiveness. It's reclamation. I don't talk to most of them anymore. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. My life is quieter now. Messier, more honest, and fully mine. If you were in my place, would you have exposed them? Or would you have played along to keep the peace? Let me know what you think. And if stories like this make you question how much of your own life is truly yours, staying around here might be worth it.